Chamber of Commerce to highlight how Bidenomics and the Investing in America agenda is help driving a Black small business boom and announce new investments in Milwaukee and communities across the country. Under President Biden's leadership, the United States is on track to have
a Black small business boom and announce new investments in Milwaukee and communities across the country. Under President Biden's leadership, the United States is on track to have a Black small business boom and announce new investments in Milwaukee and communities across the country. Under President Biden's leadership, businesses, which is critical to President Biden's commitment to building an economy from the middle out and the bottom up, not the top down. Today, we have seen this in action in Milwaukee with the help of investments through the American Rescue Plan, the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, the Inflation Reduction Act, and others. Milwaukee has seen an economic comeback under President Biden, with the share of the Black population employed reaching a more than decade high and new business applications in Milwaukee up nearly 70%. The unemployment rate in Milwaukee has dropped more than 2 percentage points since President Biden took office, and Milwaukee is on the comeback. Building on this progress, President Biden will announce that the Grow Milwaukee Coalition is one of 22 finalists for the Department of Commerce Economic Development Administration's Distressed Area Recompete Pilot Program. This program, which is authorized by the CHIPS and Science Act, is focused on investing in quality job creation, small business growth, and economic opportunity in America's hardest hit communities. Milwaukee and 21 other coalitions from across the country will compete for nearly $190 million in implementation funds to address critical gaps to ensure that the share of working age Americans is brought up to the national average and grow economic opportunity and mobility in some of our hardest hit and most economically distressed communities across the country. The Grow Milwaukee Coalition proposal would invest in revitalizing Milwaukee's historic 30th Street industrial corridor, connect the historically segregated Black community to economic opportunity across the country or across the city. Of the 22 recompete finalists across 19 states and Puerto Rico, 8 are specifically focused on growing Black-owned businesses and entrepreneurship and supporting economic development in disadvantaged communities that are majority Black. With that, I want to turn it over to my colleague, Michael Negron, who will discuss how the president's Investing in America agenda is driving a small business boom in the United States. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. And good morning, everybody. My name is Michael Negron. I'm the Special Assistant to the President for Economic Policy. President Biden and Vice President Harris believe that small businesses like Hero Plumbing, who Alex mentioned would be joining the president today, are the engines of our economy and the heart and soul of our communities. As the president will say today, this isn't just about serving consumers every day. Small businesses sponsor Little League teams, they contribute to food and clothing drives, and so many of them are the first employers for our teenage children. I know that my first job was at a small business in the Chicago area. That's why we put small businesses at the center of the president's Investing in America agenda. We delivered hundreds of billions in relief in the early days of the pandemic to small businesses soon after taking office. We've set new records for federal contracting with small businesses and small disadvantaged businesses. And the investments that we are making in infrastructure and manufacturing, and semiconductors and broadband will benefit small businesses, not only because they will benefit from those investments, but they will participate in those investments. As the director has mentioned, thanks to these efforts, Americans have filed 15 million applications to start new businesses since we took office. And Black entrepreneurs have been amongst the strongest engines for this boom. The share of Black households owning a business has more than doubled since 2019. And as both Alex and the director have mentioned, and it's a stat that we're going to say a lot in the coming weeks, we are seeing the fastest growth in Black business ownership in more than 30 years. And we aren't stopping. Through the American Rescue Plan, we are investing $10 billion through the Treasury Department to support state-level programs to provide small businesses with more capital, from loans to venture capital for small businesses. This includes $79 million in Wisconsin, where the president is today. And each of those Treasury dollars is required to bring in 10 more in private and local capital, which helps ensure that this investment will bring in tens of billions of dollars in support to small business over the next decade. We are also making unprecedented investments in providing hands-on assistance to small businesses, because the president knows that it's not enough just to set up a program. We have to help businesses access those programs. So whether it's through the $125 million through the Minority Business Development Agency, which will support incubators and accelerators that directly help minority-owned businesses, or through the more than $200 million through the Treasury Department that's supporting state-level programs for technical assistance. And then just last week, we hosted at the White House the SBA Community Navigator Organizations, another American Rescue program, another American Rescue Plan program, who provided training and counseling to more than 350,000 small businesses over the 2 years of the program, and roughly 43% of those businesses were Black-owned. The Small Business Administration has focused on expanding its lending to minority-owned businesses and increasing capital options. The SBA made $50 billion in loans this past year, and that includes a doubling of the number and the value of loans to Black-owned businesses since 2020. And the president has committed to increasing the share of federal contract dollars that go to small disadvantaged businesses by 50% by 2025 compared to what it was when we took office. So that's from 10% when we came into office to 15% by 2025, and we're on track. Last year, we spent $70 billion on these businesses, and we expect to go even farther in the coming years. And this is in the face of courtroom challenges. So thank you all for joining us today. Thank you for all the work that you do every day to support our small businesses, and I'm happy to turn it over to Taylor.
Thank you, Michael. We can now dive into a few of the questions that you all sent. So the first question is, what do you think is driving growth among Black-owned businesses? Michael, do you want to take that one?
Sure, and let me just say just how excited we are in the White House about this data, from the president and the vice president to Director Benjamin on down to the staff to see these trends. As the director mentioned, when Black businesses do well, they create jobs and they generate wealth in their local communities. And as a result, Black wealth is up a record 60% compared to before the pandemic, and Black unemployment has reached historic lows. So we think there are a couple reasons behind this growth. Number one, we've got a historically strong job market these past few years. I mentioned low Black unemployment as being a big part of it, but as many of the small businesses that you serve and work with have undoubtedly said in recent years, workers have more job choices. That means one element of that is it can be more challenging to fill open positions, but it also means that more workers seeing that job market are more willing to bet on themselves and start their own businesses. Studies have shown also that the economic impact payments that we made through the American Rescue Plan, these are those $1,400 checks that went to 85% of Americans, in addition to some of the other reducing the cost of healthcare through the American Rescue Plan, the child tax credit. The combination of these initiatives gave more and more Americans an additional cushion, and that encouraged more to take a chance and start a new business. And our administration has been focused like a laser on providing more capital options to small business. As I mentioned, SBA lending to Black businesses is up significantly, but we've also expanded lending options, bringing in more non-traditional lenders into the SBA program. We provided more funding for community development financial institutions, $12 billion through Treasury, and these are institutions that historically focus on providing lending to minority-owned businesses. So we're very encouraged by this growth, very happy to see it, but we know that we have so much more work to do, and that's why today's announcement is so important, and we'll continue to work on this on behalf of the American people.
Awesome. Thank you, Michael. The next question is directed to you, Mr. Mayor. How is the administration ensuring minority-owned businesses have access to federal contracting opportunities?
You know, I think it's important for everyone to know that you hear it periodically, but in every meeting that I have, and I think many of us have with the president on these topics, that this connective tissue of equity and making sure, as you've seen from the very first day of the administration with the president's executive order, it's very real to him. And making the commitments that Michael just referenced is sacrosanct to who he is and the vice president are as leaders of this country. As Michael said, the president's goal of increasing shared contracts to small disadvantaged businesses to 15% is real, and we're on track to meeting that goal of 50% increase since we took office. The administration is awarding nearly $70 billion in fiscal year 2022, a new record to small disadvantaged businesses as well. The president's leadership in making sure that the MBDA became a permanent agency for the very first time in the history and the leadership of Don Cravens is, I think, also a great example of having the commitment to making sure that minority businesses have real access and someone fighting for them every single day, arm in arm with the SBA and the rest of government as well, the whole of government approach to making sure that these promises become real. We've seen $12 billion invested in community lenders, including CDFIs and minority depository institutions, to again expand access to capital and resources that have often sidelined some really talented entrepreneurs who just need access to capital. That is real under the Biden and Harris administration, recognizing that the whole government approach is so important because U.S. government buys about $650 billion in goods and services every single year, the single largest purchaser in the country. That spending power is a powerful tool to support small business growth, and we're all in and making sure that's real for every single business in this country. Thank you, Tim.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Our third question, Alex, I think you can take this one. Some communities are making an economic comeback and others are still facing challenges. Why are you focusing on supporting communities facing obstacles, and how will you know if policies are actually working?
Thanks, Taylor. I think we are looking at a few different metrics to monitor whether or not the president's economic agenda is working. First, at the macro level, nationwide, we have seen significant progress, particularly recovering from a once-in-a-generation pandemic and economic recession. Real wages adjusted for inflation are up since prior to the pandemic. They're up for more. They're up by more for low and middle income Americans. Our labor market continues to show strength. 2.2 million more Americans have jobs than forecasted before the pandemic. Median household wealth is up 37% since before the pandemic, and inflation is down by more than 2/3 since the pandemic. So these are the trends we watch at the macro level, but also knowing that economic conditions are felt at the local and community level as well, which is why today's announcement from the Department of Commerce we think is so critically important and so well targeted. The Recompete program specifically targets communities with prime age employment gaps. These are communities where workers in their prime working ages, 25 to 56, a lower share of these workers are in the labor force than in other communities. We find that this is one of the best indicators of economic distress in local communities where, for whatever reason, through systemic segregation and historic injustice, disinvestment, offshoring, and trade and policy reasons, these workers have not had the ability or opportunity to enter the workforce. And that is what the Recompete program is really about, is getting into these places, these local neighborhoods where the most distressed communities are facing these economic challenges, and providing flexible, long-term, locally led solutions to get these workers back into the labor force, to get small businesses up and running, to train workers and create opportunities and create and link workers to good paying jobs. That is one of the key metrics we will be focusing on at the local level to ensure that these programs are working. The president has committed, he's been upfront from the very first day of the administration, that our economic agenda is going to leave no place, no community, and no worker behind. That is why we are so
focused on the places that have been disinvested for far too long, whether it's rural areas, whether it's these distressed urban areas, whether it's historic fossil fuel and energy communities. These places need to be on the forefront of our economic recovery and expansion. And that's why every program in the Investing in America agenda, from the American Rescue Plan, the Infrastructure Law, CHIPS and Science Act, and the Inflation Reduction Act, have specially targeted place-based investments, incentives, and bonuses to ensure that these opportunities are reaching these places that for too long have just been left out of economic opportunity from federal funding and from the growth and prosperity that so many places have enjoyed. Back to you, Taylor.
Great. Thank you, Alex. Our final question will go to you, Mr. Mayor, before you close us out. We have several hundred incredible organizations represented on this call today. How can these organizations help support this work that you, Michael, and Alex have talked about and increase opportunities for minority-owned small businesses?
Yeah, I know we have so many amazingly talented entrepreneurs and business leaders of every size here on this call. From some of the amazing asset managers we met with talking about great access to venture capital and to small businesses in Washington D.C. like Sweet Maddie's Bakery to Hero Plumbing that we're going to be visiting in Milwaukee just later today with the president. Keep doing what you're doing. Keep providing economic opportunity. Michael referencing his first job in Chicago. The work that you do that provides the glue that connects communities and helps create generational wealth is so doggone important. And we want to make sure that you know in the season of Thanksgiving how much the president and vice president appreciate your leadership. Part of that leadership is making sure you engage with us directly. We're seeing record amounts of capital moving throughout our communities because of the president and vice president's leadership. But we need to make sure we know and see what you all are hearing and seeing on the ground every single day. So remain engaged with us, making sure that you're reaching out to inform us on the obstacles that you're facing, and also on the opportunities that you might see in your respective communities for us to help expand opportunity for everyone. We have indeed a whole of government approach to support Black-owned businesses. We need your help in ensuring that entrepreneurs and aspiring entrepreneurs in your communities are aware of all the different opportunities that are available to them, and that people are taking advantage of these opportunities in this historic moment that we're living. And we're going to continue to do our job, our very best in getting information out through forums like this and other available methods. But I will also say this, we are aware and cognizant that there is a real strategy afoot all across this country to deny economic opportunity to so many of our businesses, the businesses you've helped build, the businesses that you dreamed of. And we want to make sure that you know that we are locked in side by side with you in making sure that this principle of equity that the president articulated on day one in office, understanding that when, in fact, we embrace diversity as a strength of America, and then when we commit ourselves to inclusive government, we realize that a rising tide does indeed lift all boats. We're committed in this side by side, but it also is going to require each and every one of you to support the organizations that continue to fight on behalf of small businesses every single day. Get dialed in with them, support their efforts. There are things that we can do here in the government, and there are things that have to exclusively come from the outside. But we want to encourage every single one of us. Let's keep doing what you're doing, building your businesses. But let's remain together, involved in this struggle to make sure that the promises of America are real for each and every one of us. Thank you, and God bless you. Thank you, Taylor.
Well, that meeting is over. It started as quickly, or it ended as quickly as it started. I got the email this morning about it, and then immediately decided to respond and share with you what the president was reporting here. And I'm this slightly, ever so slightly, I suppose, dismayed. I expected more of an initiative. It came from the Office of Public Engagement 48 minutes ago. I received no warning about this other than that. On behalf of the Biden-Harris administration, we invite you to join us today, Wednesday, December 20th at 8:30 a.m. for a briefing with Stephen Benjamin, Director of the Office of Public Engagement, the gentleman speaking, and Joelle Gamble, Deputy Director of the National Economic Council, on how President Biden's Investing in America agenda is delivering, I should say America's agenda, is delivering for Black-owned small businesses and hard-hit communities. And so that's what that was about. They have a fact sheet ahead of, and I'll put this fact sheet in here right now, copy and paste it, and then I'll read it. One moment, please. So it says that, just a repeat of what we were told about Black businesses increasing at a rate not seen in 30 years. It's quite extensive. So let me see how much of this I can get in. This may be beyond the 5,000 character limit for YouTube. Let me find out in a second if it is. I'm pasting it right now to what I've already pasted. And let's see if I can fit all of it or most of it. And as I suspected, only it's 11,850 characters versus the limit of 5,000. So I have to cut it off. And I will. The question is where to cut it off. And so I will cut it off here. And then refresh, save the changes. So now that's in. All right, so now let me explain to you what it is, and let me show you what it looks like on top of all that, since I just got it, if indeed it is shareable. One moment, please. It is, well, is that it? No, that's not it either. It's not shareable. It's within an email. It's within the White House there, a fact sheet. So trying to figure out how to best display this so you can see it in my system here. And let me refresh it first of all. Do that, and then we go back here. Bear with me, folks. Bear with me. It's worth seeing. This fact sheet. If I can put it up, push it up here. Let's see here. We've got webinar registration. Let's log in. There it is. That's it. Okay, there it is. All right, so let me go back up here. And as you can see, it's fact sheet. President Biden to highlight how his Investing in America agenda has led to Black small business boom. And the subheading is Black small business ownership is growing at the fastest pace in 30 years. And President Biden will announce new investments to support underserved communities. Today, President Biden was at the Wisconsin Black Chamber of Commerce to highlight how Bidenomics is helping drive a Black small business boom and announce new investments in Milwaukee and communities across the country. Under President Biden's leadership, the United States is on track to have the 3 strongest years in history for new small business applications, and with Black business ownership growing at the fastest pace in 30 years. President Biden will be joined by the founder and owner of Hero Plumbing, a Black-owned small business removing lead pipes in Milwaukee, which will help meet President Biden's commitment to remove all lead service lines in the country by the end of the decade and benefit from the historic $15 billion in funding through the bipartisan infrastructure law. While President Biden highlights historic investments from his administration to support small businesses, including Black-owned businesses, extreme Republicans in Congress have repeatedly tried to dismantle the president's small business agenda. Every single Republican opposed the American Rescue Plan, which helped small businesses stay afloat during the pandemic and spurred a record small business boom. Many Republicans in Congress, including Wisconsin Senator Ron Johnson, opposed the bipartisan infrastructure law. They also want to repeal key provisions of the Infrastructure Reduction Act that are lowering healthcare, prescription drugs, and energy costs. President Biden will continue fighting for opportunities for working families and small business owners, while Republicans in Congress want to return to failed trickle-down economics that for too long left too many communities behind. Beyond attacks from Republicans in Congress over the past few months, there's been an intentional effort to erode ladders to Black economic opportunity. The president understands that diversity contributes to our economic security, and he has made unprecedented investments in Black communities to preserve the American dream. Investing in Black entrepreneurship and opportunity. Small businesses like Hero Plumbing are the backbone of the U.S. economy, creating jobs and opportunities in local communities. President Biden's Investing in America agenda has driven historic gains in small business creation and entrepreneurship. Since taking office, Americans have filed a record 15 million applications to start new businesses. Black business ownership is growing at the fastest pace in 30 years, and the share of Black households owning a business has doubled between 2019 and 2022 after falling between 2007 and 2019. When Black businesses do well, they create jobs, generate wealth in their local communities, and make the broader economy stronger. As a result, Black wealth is up a record 60% from before the pandemic, and Black unemployment has reached historic lows. The administration's investment in Black entrepreneurs is producing results, including nearly $70 billion, a new record, in fiscal year 2022 on federal contracts awarded to small disadvantaged businesses, $12 billion in community lenders to expand access to capital and resources to too often sidelined entrepreneurs. The U.S. Department of Treasury estimates that these investments in community lenders will result in a $50 billion increase in lending to Latino communities and a nearly $80 billion increase in lending to Black communities over the next decade. $10 billion in states, tribes, and territories to launch and expand capital access programs for roughly 100,000 small businesses, including $79 million to Wisconsin. New investments in small business growth in local communities across the country. Investing in local, community-led economic development in small businesses is critical to President Biden's commitment to build the economy from the middle out and the bottom up, not the top down. Milwaukee has seen an economic comeback under President Biden, with the share of the Black population employed reaching a more than decade high and new business applications up nearly 70%. Building on this progress, President Biden will announce that the Grow Milwaukee Coalition is one of 22 finalists for the Department of Commerce Economic Development Administration Distressed Area Recompete Pilot Program. This program, funded by the CHIPS and Science Act, is focused on investing in quality, job creation, small business growth, and economic opportunity in America's hardest hit communities. The Grow Milwaukee Coalition proposed would invest in revitalizing Milwaukee's historic 30th Street industrial corridor and connecting the historically segregated Black community to economic opportunity across the city. Of the 22 recompete finalists across 19 straight states and Puerto Rico, 8 are specifically focused on growing Black-owned businesses and entrepreneurship and supporting economic development in disadvantaged communities that are majority Black. The 22 recompete finalists will compete for $190 million in flexible implementation funding for locally led economic development plans to create and support small businesses, train workers, and connect them to good paying jobs, investment in infrastructure, and technical assistance. Today's announcements build on historic progress and investments in Black-owned businesses. President Biden's American Rescue Plan is supporting small businesses, including Black-owned businesses in Wisconsin and across the country through a $10 billion investment, including $79 million in Wisconsin, to help small businesses access the capital they need. The American Rescue Plan invested $10 billion to launch and expand capital access programs for roughly 100,000 businesses. To date, the Treasury Department has already approved more than $8 billion in funding to all 50 states and an additional $108 million in technical assistance grants to 32 states. These funds include $79 million in capital dollars and $1.9 million in technical assistance for Wisconsin, the largest ever dedicated federal investment to connect minority small businesses to support. The Small Business Community Navigators pilot program provided $100 million in funding to 51 organizations, including the U.S. Black Chamber of Commerce, the National Urban League, that work with local groups to connect entrepreneurs to resources to help their small businesses recover and thrive. A recent SBA analysis shows that community navigators provided training and counseling to more than 350,000 small businesses, and roughly 43% of the businesses served were Black-owned. The largest ever direct federal investment in small business incubators and accelerators. The Minority Business Development Agency, or MBDA, Capital Readiness Program awarded 43 nonprofit community-based organizations $125 million in funding to support underserved entrepreneurs launch and scale their small business, including $3 million for Wisconsin, delivering roughly $150 million in support for small businesses in Wisconsin. The state of Wisconsin leveraged the ARP to provide $75 million for 5,200 businesses with Main Street Bounce Back business grants and invest $73 million in the Diverse Business Assistance Program to assist chambers and nonprofit organizations providing assistance to small business. President Biden's Small Business Administration delivered $50 billion to small businesses in fiscal year 2023, with major increases in support for underserved businesses, including Black-owned businesses. Since 2020, the share of the SBA loan portfolio going to minority businesses has increased from 23% to over 32%. The number and dollar value of SBA-backed loans to Black-owned businesses has more than doubled since 2020. Then, achieving record federal contract spending on small disadvantaged businesses, or SDBs. In 2022, the Biden-Harris administration awarded a record-breaking $163 billion in federal procurement opportunities to small businesses. These awards included a record $69 billion, or 11.4% of federal contract spending, to SDBs, exceeding the administration's fiscal year 2022 goal. Shortly after taking office, President Biden set a goal of increasing the share of contracts with SDBs to 18% of all federal contracts by fiscal year 2025, a 50% increase from spending levels when he first took office. Supporting small and disadvantaged businesses through the CHIPS Act funding. In addition to the recompete program, the first CHIP notice of funding opportunity for semiconductor manufacturing requires applicants to develop a workforce plan to create equitable pathways for economically disadvantaged individuals in their region, as well as a plan to support procurement from small minority-owned, veteran-owned, and women-owned businesses. The department has also announced a $500 million funding opportunity catered towards small businesses to support the semiconductor supply chain, expanding and making minority Business Development Agency permanent. President Biden's bipartisan infrastructure law expanded the geographic reach of the Minority Business Development Agency by authorizing new regional offices in small and business centers and codified the agency in statute. The law also increases MDBA's grant-making capacity and ability to partner with nonprofits and historically Black colleges and universities. In doing so, the law provides certainty and new resources to the more than 9 million minority-owned businesses across the nation, increasing access to capital for small and disadvantaged businesses applying for infrastructure contracts. The Department of Transportation and SBA have collaborated to connect small businesses seeking long-term loans or patient capital with small business investment companies. This matchmaking provides small business and small and minority businesses with financing that enables them to apply for larger contracts and projects than they would ordinarily be able to reach. In fiscal year 2023 alone, the SBIC program set a record by delivering more than $4 billion in commitments to funds that support small businesses and startups. Last year, the SBA's portfolio of 318 small SBICs funds collectively provided financing to more than 1,200 small businesses and startups, which created or sustained over 130,000 jobs. The SBIC financed over $161 million for small businesses in Wisconsin in fiscal year 2023. That was a 40% increase compared to the previous year, fiscal year 2022. Supporting small minority-owned businesses and clean energy industries. As part of its historic investment in climate and clean energy through the Inflation Reduction Act, the Biden-Harris administration has supported new efforts to grow disadvantaged clean energy businesses in underserved communities. That includes a $6.3 million investment in a group that is working to coordinate and train disadvantaged and minority-owned businesses on how to apply for clean energy funding. In addition, the Environmental Protection Agency, the EPA, its $27 billion greenhouse gas reduction fund will invest in clean energy technology projects in low-income and disadvantaged communities and build the capacity of community lenders to finance clean energy projects that support local economies. And that is it. That is a readout of what the White House sent to Zenny 62 Media this morning, entitled Fact Sheet: President Biden to highlight how his Investing in America agenda has led to a Black small business boom. And now, what do I think? Well, it cobbles together a lot of existing programs and says, hey, basically, this is what we're doing. But what's really needed is a new initiative, because it talks about the number of Black small businesses that were started essentially during the pandemic, including Zenny 62 Media, which was incorporated, well, just before the pandemic. We were incorporated December 17th of 2019, and then the pandemic started, as you know, March of 2020. So this organization was started at the right time, if you will, if one can say that, okay? But what Biden-Harris administration focuses on is how many Black businesses were started, but it doesn't look at sustaining the businesses. In other words, how many Black businesses have went under, and what the administration is doing to make sure that current Black businesses stay afloat. If I happen to type, for example, right now, just on the spur, Black businesses closed, okay, what I get back is COVID-19 disproportionately impacted Black small businesses. And that was as of July 3rd of 2021 by Forbes. Black-owned businesses closed at record numbers during COVID-19 compared to other racial groups. But research shows, this Forbes article, but research shows that Black business ownership would decline more than 40%, which was the largest drop among any ethnic group, according to a report by the House Committee on Small Business. And the report details the impact that COVID-19 had on Black-owned businesses in the United States. Black-owned businesses were less likely to handle mandated closures due to lack of access to financial relief. Even before COVID-19 pandemic outbreak, Black people faced many financial inequities and roadblocks. For starters, the persistence of the racial wealth gap continues to plague the Black community and particularly small business owners. Wealth is determined by one's asset accumulated over time, such as savings, retirement accounts, and real estate, minus debts. Institutionalized racism has put the Black community far behind its white counterparts when it comes to accumulating such wealth. According to the Hamilton Project for 2019, the median white household income held $188,200 in wealth, more than 7.8 times that of Black households. Small progress has been made, but the gap remains significant. In 2016, white households had 10 times more wealth than Black households. During this time, the median wealth for a white household was $171,000, whereas it was just $17,100 for a Black household. Another principal barrier is the chain of events that Black people faced, keeping them from creating wealth opportunities compared to their white counterparts. The denial of wealth creation for Black people can be traced back 246 years. Slavery, the 1921 race massacre in Tulsa's Black Wall Street that left dozens dead and 10,000 homeless after more than 1,400 homes and businesses were burned, and discriminatory policies in both housing and lending have all impeded the growth of Black wealth. And the path to equality is a long and arduous one. A study by the Institute of Policy Studies found that it could take more than 200 years for Black families to accumulate the same amount of wealth as white families due to the structural racism in the United States housing market alone. Access to wealth can help Black small business owners during the COVID-19 pandemic. The success of a business thriving through a financially challenged pandemic depends not only on wealth, but access to capital. A study by McKinsey Company found that while all small business owners faced challenges during COVID-19, those with limited financial assets were more at risk. For this reason, not having accumulated wealth meant Black small business owners were some of the most vulnerable. According to the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, about 58% of Black-owned businesses were at risk of financial distress for the pandemic, compared with 27% of white-owned businesses. Since there is a significant wealth disparity among Black people, having access to capital can help bridge the gap for Black small business owners. However, research shows that Blacks are more likely to be denied capital compared to whites, even with similar credit worthiness. That's called racism. Quote, Black small businesses already had lower access to capital and credit and lower average revenues, making them less prepared to face the financial hardships caused by the pandemic, said Kristen Brody, a fellow at the Metropolitan Policy Program at the Brookings Institution. Blacks even experienced challenges of obtaining capital during COVID-19 from governmental programs, such as the Paycheck Protection Program, a program administered by the Small Business Administration to provide funding for businesses that suffered pandemic-related revenue loss. Quote, due to the racial wealth gap, Black small businesses owners, particularly sole proprietors, would be unlikely to cover business expenses during the pandemic if they did not receive a PPP loan, said Brody. The Paycheck Protection loans reach only 20% of eligible firms in states with the highest density of Black-owned firms. Also, a study found that the PPP loan success rate of white applicants was 60%. However, only 29% for Black business owners. Jamila Smith is the previous owner of Grace Academy, a daycare that provided services for children under the age of 6 in New Orleans. Smith started her own business in 2017, but was forced to temporarily shut down during the COVID-19 pandemic due to the loss of customers and being denied federal assistance, such as a PPP loan. Quote, without any income and lack of approval for the PPP loan, my business remains closed. Without the capital needed to keep going, I am uncertain of my business future, said Smith. Smith applied for the first round of the PPP and was denied by her financial institution. She reapplied, but remains uncertain if she will receive funds needed to continue her business. And this is written in 2021. So it's by now, this is 2023. This is long closed. Unless, of course, something of good circumstance happened to her, and I hope it did. I continue. The PPP loan program stopped taking new applications in May of 2021, but it will continue processing existing ones. Now, this program should still be going. There was no reason to stop the program. And this is what I'm getting at. This is a failure. This was a failure of the Biden administration. And Biden would point to fraud, but my point is fraud. In the case of Zenny 62 Media, we own a number of URLs. Well, the Small Business Administration, someone there was under the impression that because we owned URLs that were consistent with our business, that we were not a real business. I'm not kidding you. You heard what I told you. And so Jim Atchison, an SBA attorney, was kind enough to call me, and I'm giving him a shout out. And he told me what the reason was. He agreed that it was stupid and had them get off of it. All right. So this is the kind of example of problems in perception that Black businesses have. And if you're on the internet, those problems are heightened because you have a number of people who don't understand how to recognize the internet business. They try to do it from the perspective of a bricks and mortar business, and that's untenable. This report says work ahead for Black small business owners, and it goes on to basically explain a lot of what you already know by now. But this gets to my statement regarding what the Biden administration needs to do. It needs to address that Black small businesses, and I just found this off on the search, right? But Black small businesses are suffering even during the pandemic, and there needs to be a program to really clear out that problem, to say, hey, look, we're investing $5 billion in minority and women-owned businesses so that they can recover or continue recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic and make that stick. Okay. Now, for those who would say that's discriminatory, I would say you're correct. It should be part of a larger effort of $50 billion to get $50 billion, really $100 billion out there to help small businesses that have not completely recovered. Businesses that, for example, apply for the economic development, the economic injury disaster loan program, and like I did over a 2-year period, and was put on constant hold. I never got the update that I said I was eligible for. I never got the expansion that I said I was. They wrote to me, "Hey, you're eligible for this expanded loan," and I thought, "Oh, great." So I reapplied for that 8 times. Nothing was done. Each application just sat there. There were 2 rejections. Then someone else said we shouldn't have got a rejection. It was crazy making. And at the end of the day, I was missing $25,000 that Zenny 62 Media really needed for working capital for our vloggers. So, and now our need really is more like at $250,000, although our basic needs are met right now by our clients. But I'm talking about in terms of sustaining ourselves and continuing for the future. Not that And so one way or another, I believe that will work itself out, because our cost envelope is microscopically small compared to our revenue potential. In other words, we need very little money to sustain ourselves, which allows us to make a lot of money going forward. So there you go. At any rate, that's the report. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to Zenny62 on YouTube. Biden's